This is by Wrestling Bios. They do good stuff. Check out their channel, Wrestling Bios. When Sycho Sid ruled the world, Sid, 1996-97. Title run. Still can't believe about Sid, man. Damn. Let's check this out. Have my lunch. This guy does some good work, boy.
In late 1996, Sycho Sid became the WWF champion by defeating Shawn Michaels and ending HBK's, quote, boyhood dream in Madison Square Garden. It was quite unexpected. Sid winning the title wasn't originally planned by the WWF, but when backstage issues led to the big man returning, he eventually became the master and ruler of the world. It was an interesting time for the World Wrestling Federation for sure. While WWE documentaries and publications would have you believe that Steve Austin was the man who made wrestling fans cheer for the bad guy, it can be argued that Sid was the true catalyst for fans getting behind villains during this time period, at least in the World Wrestling Federation. Vince McMahon's company was behind with the times in late 1996. Over on WCW, Eric Bischoff had struck gold with the New World Order, and wrestling fans were getting behind these cool bad guy characters. The alternative ECW was making headlines with their style of no-nonsense hardcore wrestling, and the World Wrestling Federation were still trying to do the same thing they had done for years, the cut and dry good guy versus bad guy stuff that, in reality, fans were getting a little tired of. While there will always be heels and babyfaces in wrestling, the WWF hadn't dabbled in that grey area, and also the company seemed to shy away from embracing the fact that bad guys can also have huge fan bases. And at the 1996 Survivor Series, the WWF found out that their fans weren't so easily conditioned anymore when the company's white meat babyface got completely booed out of the building in favour for a new type of main eventer, one who didn't kiss up to the fans, and one who didn't necessarily do the right thing. In the World Wrestling Federation, Steve Austin perfected this anti-hero persona, and Steve Austin was the one who had the most success with the trait, becoming one of the most popular anti-establishment superstars of all time, and the World Wrestling Federation even embraced the fans' reaction to Steve Austin. But when fans got behind Sycho Sid, the WWF were seemingly caught off guard. This video will take a look at Sycho Sid's WWF Championship runs during late 1996 and early 1997. Sid was brought back to the WWF when the Ultimate Warrior was fired for no-showing events. Warrior was scheduled to team up with Shawn Michaels and Ahmed Johnson to face Ken Cornette in the Your House International incident, but Warrior ended up getting replaced with a returning Sycho Sid. Sid was booked as a babyface upon his return, and thanks in part to the popularity of his tag team partners, Sid got a great crowd reaction at the 9th in Your House. Vader pinned Michaels to win the match for Ken Cornette, but Sid got the last laugh by delivering powerbombs to both Owen Hart and Davey Boy Smith. Michaels attacked Vader after the match ended, and Jim Cornette demanded that Vader got a title shot at SummerSlam 1996, seeing as the Mastodon just pinned the WWF champion in the middle of the ring. Vader versus Michaels was set in stone, and Sycho Sid would continue his babyface run with a match against the British Bulldog at SummerSlam, a match that Sid won. The story coming out of SummerSlam, though, was Shawn's attitude during this match with Vader. Shawn legitimately berated his opponent in the ring when spots were missed, and it was very clear that the champion was not happy with how this match turned out. It's been reported that this SummerSlam match was supposed to be the beginning of a series of matches between Vader and Michaels that would eventually lead to Vader winning the WWF Championship at Survivor Series.
Yeah, I remember that. Michaels didn't like Vader. I remember that.
Shawn Michaels complained so much about Vader backstage that the big man got his title run taken away from him. With all this reported backstage heat going on, Vince McMahon would need to put another competitor in the WWF title match at Survivor Series, and Vince McMahon decided that Sycho Sid would be a fitting replacement. If you watch the SummerSlam 96 title match, though, you can tell that the Vader versus Michaels rivalry was supposed to continue on. It's a very inconclusive bout with multiple restarts, and Vader was absolutely Shawn's most dangerous challenger up to that point. It's a real shame that Vader didn't get his WWF title run, but sure, let's move on.
Damn, Michael.
2 pay-per-views would take place before Survivor Series: In Your House Mind Games and In Your House Buried Alive. Sid wrestled Vader on both shows. The former was a dark match, while the latter was shown on pay-per-view. The match at Buried Alive was for a shot at the WWF title at Survivor Series, and Sid won the bout after delivering a chokeslam to Vader. Shawn Michaels congratulated Sid after the bout, and then Sid had a backstage interview. Jim Ross reminded Sid that he turned his back on HBK back in 1995, and Sid hit Shawn with multiple powerbombs. And Jim asked Sid if he would be willing to destroy Michaels again in order to claim the championship. Sid said he would. Sid said he'll do whatever it takes to fulfill his destiny. Jerry Lawler and Vince McMahon pondered over Sid's statement afterwards, unsure if this Sid was the same guy who totally wrecked Shawn Michaels the year prior. During Shawn's 1996 title run, his pay-per-view opponents were always quite cut and dry when it came to their overall position with WWF fans. It was always the classic white meat babyface versus a no-good villain. Shawn's status with WWF fans was never really in question because he always went up against the WWF's biggest bad guys, and so Shawn was pretty much protected in terms of his popularity. Coming out of In Your House Buried Alive, it looked like fans would get to see a babyface Sid versus a babyface Shawn Michaels, but thanks to Shawn's overall popularity and thanks to the receptions that Shawn had been getting during 1996, the WWF were fully expecting the fans to cheer for HBK and boo Sycho Sid at the Survivor Series. It really wasn't in question. Shawn's crowd reactions had been great during his run at the top, and even though Sid was going to beat HBK for the belt, the WWF booked the match in a way that left Sid with absolutely no redeeming qualities. Sid wasn't a complete all-out villain heading into the Survivor Series, though the World Wrestling Federation laid out a finish that was supposed to completely turn Sycho Sid into a bad guy. But fans cheered for the big man from bell to bell. We'll get to the Survivor Series in a moment, though. Let's look at the weeks leading up to the
He wasn't crazy about Michaels. It wasn't.
The night following In Your House, Sid opened up Raw with a match against Owen Hart. Shawn Michaels came to the aid of Sid when Davey Boy Smith got involved, and after taking out Owen and Bulldog, HBK and Sid shook hands. Nothing was out of place. The following week, Shawn had a match with Davey Boy Smith and Owen got involved. This led to Sid saving HBK during the fight, but Sid accidentally elbowed Michaels in the back. The two men started bickering, but they were interrupted by Owen Hart challenging both men to a tag team match, a match that Sid and Shawn accepted. Before the tag team match, though, Sid and Shawn had an in-ring promo with Jim Ross, and it was here when Sid started to come across as more of a heel. Shawn said he brought Sid back to the WWF even though he powerbombed him multiple times in 1995 because Sid was his friend, but Sid wasn't really agreeing with Shawn here. Sid said that he's the favourite to win the WWF Championship at Survivor Series because of his size and ability, but Shawn says that it's Sid's abilities that will be his downfall during their title match. HBK then said that in the ring, Sid isn't in the same league as Shawn Michaels, and Sid agreed. Sid said he isn't in the same league as HBK because HBK is in the Little League. The two men begin pushing each other around before Ken Cornette shows up, and Jim Cornette gets a jab into Shawn Michaels by announcing that Vader was supposed to be in the main event at Survivor Series and not Sycho Sid. A brawl breaks out and Owen Hart hits Sid across the back with a steel chair. Shawn takes the chair away from Owen, but Sid thinks it was HBK who hit him. Officials then have to break the two men up as the segment comes to an end. The tag team match took place the following week, and things were going fine initially. HBK and Sid functioned well as a team. Towards the end of the bout, Shawn accidentally hit Sid with sweet chin music, And Owen and Davey took this opportunity to beat up their opponents, leaving Shawn and Sid out cold in the middle of the ring. HBK and Sid had to get separated backstage as Raw continued. Kevin Kelly was able to get interviews with both men later on.
Kevin Kelly
said that he doesn't care if the super kick was a mistake. There will be no mistakes inside Madison Square Garden at the Survivor Series. Shawn says the super kick may have been a mistake, but it's still knocked Sid out cold. And at Survivor Series, the same thing is going to happen again. HBK says that he wants Sid's respect, and at the pay-per-view, Shawn Michaels will beat that respect into Sycho Sid. The New York wrestling audience has a certain reputation. They aren't afraid of letting wrestlers know who they like and who they don't. And at the Survivor Series,
New York don't play that.
Let Shawn Michaels know that they were tired of his boyhood dream title run. Sid comes to the ring and he gets a great ovation from Madison Square Garden, something that Vince McMahon and the World Wrestling Federation weren't prepared for, and you can tell this by Vince's commentary throughout the match. Watching this on TV, Vince was telling us one thing while the fans were telling us another, and we can only imagine the negative reaction Shawn Michaels would have received had he won this WWF title match. The crowd cheered for Sid from bell to bell, and Vince had hoped that a spot where Sid attacks Jose Lothario would solidify Sid as the most evil person in the world. But fans also cheered when Jose got wiped out with a television camera. The WWF had pushed and pushed the white meat babyface Shawn Michaels for months and months, and quite simply, fans were sick of it. And even though Vince McMahon wanted fans to feel sympathy for Shawn, they really couldn't care less. Sid was now on top. He was booked as a bad guy, but the fans still cheered for him. So the World Wrestling Federation now had a problem. It would be interesting to see how the company would deal with this in the weeks that followed. The next night on Raw, Vince McMahon
you can't force him to like something.
Explain to the fans at home what happened last night. Again, trying to get sympathy for Shawn Michaels. Vince even said that Shawn was a, quote, real man's man for trying to help Jose Lothario at Survivor Series instead of retaining the WWF Championship. Sid cut a promo to end Raw and two announcements were made. Shawn Michaels would get a rematch in the future, and Sid's next opponent on pay-per-view would be Bret Hart, a fan favourite who had just returned at the Survivor Series to much fanfare. The WWF were doing all they could to get fans to boo Sid, but they still cheered, and because the World Wrestling Federation were continuing to fail at reading their audience when it came to guys like Bret Hart and Steve Austin, Sid was again cheered at In Your House It's Time, where Sid successfully defended his WWF Championship. Bret Hart was slowly falling out of favour with WWF fans because of his righteous stance on justice. Just like Shawn Michaels and the WWF as a whole, fans were tired of the same old stuff, and while Bret was still trying to be the babyface he always was, fans were becoming more enamoured with Bret's main rival at the time, Stone Cold Steve Austin.
Yeah, they were getting sick of Bret and Michaels.
Different characters trying to play their given roles, but the fans were just flipping everything upside down. And you know what else? It was actually great at the time. The landscape of wrestling was changing as each week went on, and when a wrestler embraced their new status, it always gave good results. The problem with Sycho Sid, though, even though the fans wanted to cheer for him, the WWF still done everything to make fans boo him. Just look at Sid's upcoming pay-per-view schedule, for example. December was Bret Hart, January was Shawn Michaels in Shawn's hometown, and at WrestleMania, Sid would face The Undertaker, arguably the three top WWF babyfaces of 1996. The World Wrestling Federation were seemingly lost when it came to effectively booking Sycho Sid, and that will become more apparent as we continue on. It was announced that the 1997 Royal Rumble would take
remember when he
place
won the
in
belt?
San
I
Antonio,
don't remember all the
Texas.
matches,
Shawn
but I remember
Michaels
some
would
of them.
get his title rematch at this show, so there's absolutely no way Shawn was going to get booed again like he did at Survivor Series. Shawn losing the belt at Survivor Series was always the plan, whether that was against Vader or Sid, and Shawn would always regain the title in his hometown at the Royal Rumble. Because the WWF weren't banking on fans getting behind Sid, the company didn't know what to do. The big man would end up wrestling both heels and baby faces in December before facing Bret Hart at In Your House It's Time. And at the In Your House pay-per-view, Sid was able to defeat Bret Hart thanks to Shawn Michaels jumping on the apron. Shawn had cost Bret Hart the WWF title, but really, the Hitman was just collateral damage as we headed into the Alamo Dome for the 1997 Royal Rumble. But take nothing away from Big Sid here, he had just defeated Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart in back-to-back pay-per-views. As mentioned earlier, there was no way fans would cheer for Sid at the Royal Rumble pay-per-view, but just to make sure, the WWF decided it would be best for Sid to attack Jose Lothario's son, just in case. At the pay-per-view, Sid dropped the title as planned. The crowd went wild for HBK, and the World Wrestling Federation would now look on to WrestleMania 13 and the supposedly planned WWF title match between Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels. Sid's job was seemingly done, win the belt from Michaels and drop the belt to Michaels, but we all know what happens next. Shawn loses his smile and he forfeits the belt, throwing the main event scene into absolute chaos for the weeks that followed. Because of Steve Austin's controversial Royal Rumble victory, a Final Four match was booked for In Your House in February. The winner of the Final Four match would get a shot at the World Wrestling Federation title, but because Shawn had forfeited the gold, it was decided that the winner of the Final Four would become the new WWF champion. In one of the WWF's most underrated matches of all time, Bret Hart won the championship when he defeated The Undertaker, Vader and Steve Austin at In Your House Final Four. So the pay-per-view ended up attacking both men. Stone Cold done some damage to Sid's leg, and so the match was postponed. Bret vs. Sid was rescheduled a little later, but again, Steve Austin showed up backstage and he attacked the Hitman.
That Bret and Stone Cold feud.
Soon promised the fans that we would see Hart vs. Sid tonight, and the match was again rescheduled for later in the evening. Stone Cold just couldn't stay away. Austin hit Bret with his steel chair while the Hitman had the sharpshooter locked in. Sid hit the powerbomb and Sid became champion once again. Immediately after the match, The Undertaker showed up and it was announced on commentary that Sid vs. Undertaker was now official for WrestleMania 13. Bret Hart, meanwhile, would continue his rivalry with Stone Cold.
He started this getting screwed stuff, didn't he? Yeah. This was before or after that cage match?
It's easy for us to sit and fantasy book what should have happened after Shawn dropped the title. Some would say Bret vs. Austin should have been for the WWF Championship at WrestleMania. Some would say Bret vs. Taker would have been a more suitable main event. But Shawn dropping the title pretty much gave us the classic submission match between Hart and Stone Cold, so that was a positive. What wasn't so positive was that Sid was once again being asked to hold the title for a few weeks, only to drop it to an admittedly more popular superstar once again. While fans cheered for Sid on his road to WrestleMania,
Sid should have got a fair shake, a run now.
When WrestleMania came around.
And I like the Taker. I like them both. Come on now.
Second title run, mentioning the March 7th episode of Raw and the infamous steel cage match between Sid and
this was after. Okay,
Bret had
here
the
we go.
opportunity to win the WWF title back. If Bret wins,
This is when all that stuff really started.
It will be for the WWF Championship. And if Bret loses, then the Sid vs. Undertaker match goes ahead as scheduled. Because Austin and The Undertaker had an interest in the outcome of this cage match, both men would end up running down to the ring and
I remember that.
interfered in the match.
Everybody was trying to get
Austin
involved.
helping Bret and Taker helping Sid. It was a unique little story the WWF told here, and it really was a highlight through all this messy booking. In the end, Bret had the match won, but The Undertaker slammed the cage door
Right in his face.
allowing Sid to escape and win the match. Bret was livid afterwards. He pushed Vince McMahon down and he cut a promo where he said he'd been screwed by everyone in the World Wrestling Federation. Vince says that this was the true birth of the Mr. McMahon character in the World Wrestling Federation. Check this one out though, the match itself isn't bad at all, and Bret's promo is one of my favourite Raw promos of all time. The outcome of the main event match at WrestleMania 13 felt a little predictable. The Undertaker won the match, but there was also a heavy focus on Bret Hart's interference throughout the bout. Bret pretty much cost Sid the belt, but still, it would have been hard to imagine Sid leaving WrestleMania with the WWF title, even if Bret didn't get involved. Following WrestleMania, Sid would come and go. He was never placed back in the title picture, and finally, Sid left the World Wrestling Federation in July of 1997 to recover from a neck injury that required surgery. In that sense, maybe it was wise for the WWF not to go all in with Sid during 1997, but it still feels like a wasted opportunity. From the summer of 96 right up until early 1997, Sid was absolutely one of the WWF's most over superstars, and it does feel like World Wrestling Entertainment forgets this time period because Sid wasn't necessarily the most important superstar that the company was catering for at the time. Sid would end up in ECW, and eventually he went to WCW, where he took on the nickname of the Millennium Man, eventually winning the US Championship and the World Heavyweight Championship. Watching this all back again, it really feels like Sid was just stuck in the middle of other people's rivalries. Bret versus Shawn, Bret versus Austin, even Shawn versus Vader. Sid's time with the company also feels like an incredible...
I thought he was the one to belt back when he was Sid Justice, but it didn't happen.
Superstar of the WWF, but the messy situation with the WWF Championship and really the messy situation with Shawn Michaels led to Sid's title runs being nothing more than transitional. No one is going to say that Sid was a better in-ring performer than the likes of Hart, Michaels and The Undertaker, but that really wasn't important at the time. Fans were more invested in getting behind the anti-heroes, and fans really did get behind Sycho Sid. He broke the babyface run of Shawn Michaels in half. He beat Bret Hart the next month. He retained his popularity after facing Michaels in his hometown, and he again defeated the Hitman to regain the WWF Championship. That's a hell of a lot of big accomplishments. Putting Sid against The Undertaker at WrestleMania, though, was only going to result in one thing. Fans weren't going to turn their backs on the Phenom, and so it really felt like Sid's momentum came to a screeching halt in Chicago. Along with this, the WWF were confused with what to do with Sycho Sid. Maybe there was more going on backstage, or maybe Sid's overall commitment to the company could have been a problem, as reported with his previous runs. But it is a shame that Sid's run ended the way it did, and it's a shame it's pretty much all but forgotten too. Thanks very much for watching, and take care.
Yeah, Wrestling Bios, he's real good. Yeah, but like I said a few minutes ago, I thought he would have had the belt back in the early 90s when he was Sid Justice. And Hogan helping Flair get rid of him because Hogan got dumped out by Sid, and he talking about Hogan getting mad, talking about, we supposed to be buddies. He said, every man for himself. That's right, that's the Rumble. Ain't no buddies in there. No buddies, no tag part, no nothing. So then he got the belt. Let me see. 4 years later. That's not bad, because it looked like he was going to get the belt at all at first. It was getting ridiculous. I was like, damn, man. Sid should have been had the belt at least once. He had it twice. So then he went to WCW, got that, got the world belt, and got the US belt. So yeah. I was trying to have Sid as a side wrestler. Know about that. He's a main event person. What the hell are you talking about? Hell they talking about? Yeah, he's belongs in the main event. And then beating Bret and Michaels. That is something. I don't think he beat Stone Cold. I don't know if he wrestled Stone Cold. Can't remember. But yeah, that's damn good. Beat Bret and Michaels. So yeah. You miss old Sid, man. Damn.